Okay, so what I want to do is I want to pick up where we left off last time. So you guys have been working on this bootstrap template, and the idea is you want to add services like easy and convenient registration, maybe some little images, manage marathons, great for promotions. So you're going to basically just make up different services that deal with marathons. Then we have the connect to us or the contact us type portion. What I want to do is I want to wedge in between the services and the contact a login. So that way we can give our customers the ability to log in. So this would be a promoter. They can log in and start using the backend admin portion of the site. I also want to give them an ability to create an account if they don't have an account. So for right now, we're going to allow the creation of accounts for free. All right, so the idea is let's just get some customers generated and allow free access, and then eventually we'll start to charge for access. So what I want to do is I want to go into my site here, and I want to go to my application, and the view is specifically what we're dealing with. We're going to go into our public homepage. So this is the template. So one thing I want to do is I want to start by just looking for the navigation. Okay, so I can see that I've got 3 icon bars. And what that is when I shrink this down, that gives me the actual hamburger menu. So I have got a hamburger menu here. So that's what that is. But I do see an about, I do see services, I do see contact. So it's an unordered list items. So I'm just going to copy one of the list items and I'm just going to paste it right below. And what I want to do is I want to call this thing login. And I'm going to call it login. So if I save this, and then if I take a look at the website, if I refresh the website, I now have a login here. So if I take a look, you can kind of see it goes like dark, light, dark, light. So there's every other one. So if I take a look here, so we definitely have an about, we have a services, we have a login, and then we have a contact. So I've got my about, which is my intro header, and it's a contact. So I'm just going to scroll down. I see my services, which is a section A. I have my content, which is a B. Then I've got an A. Then I've got my contact. So what I think I'm going to do is I think that I'm going to probably do, if this is an A, probably going to finish that up with a B. So I'm going to just copy services, and then I see I've got a div here. If I click on the div, I can see the closing div. So I can see that I've got 6 and 6, so it's half and half. So I'm just gonna copy this, my A tag, all the way down to my closing B tag. So I'm grabbing the services, the section A, and then I'm going to copy it. I don't want to cut it. I want to leave it there because I want my services to stay there. Okay, so I've got an A, and then I've got a B. And I'm going back to an A. And then I see my contact. So before my contact, and this is the closing tag for this one here. So if I click on the div tag, I can see there's my closing, and then I've got an A tag for my contact. So I'm going to do a couple carriage returns. I'm going to paste what I copied before, and that was an A, so I'm going to flip that over to a B, just that way I can get that alternating look. And then my A tag, the name of it is going to be login. And then in here, what I want to do is I want to identify, just want to throw like use an H2. So within the row, I've got a column. I'm going to get rid of the horizontal rule. I'm going to get rid of my div tag. And for right now, I'm just going to leave the H2 in there, and I'm just going to say login. And I'm going to save that. And I just want to see how that's going to look. So if I refresh, if I scroll down, okay, I see my login here, which is good. So that way I see it alternate, so it's like the lighter, a little bit darker, than the lighter with the login. So my idea is I want to have a login on this side and to create an account on the other side. So I'm going to just kind of drill into this a little bit. So I'm going to just make this div be an H1, and I'm not going to use any class on it. It's going to be an H1 that says login. And then I've got this div here. I'm going to get rid of the image in here. I'm going to get rid of the link in here. So within one of the div tags, I'm going to have a login, and the other one, I'm going to put in a create account. Okay, so I'm going to save this. And then I'm just going to refresh. So I've got my login, I've got my create account. So I actually want to create a form here, and then my form is going to basically give us the fill-in forms and all that kind of stuff. So right underneath my login, I want to do a PHP block. And I'm going to take advantage of some of the CodeIgniter stuff. So there's like a form open, form underscore open. So that's the beginning of a form, and that's exactly what we want to do. And where we want to submit this form to is to our home controller /login. And then I'm going to just echo out form input. And basically my form input is going to be username, user underscore name, and then I'm going to do a comma, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a placeholder, so that way this is going to be an HTML attribute. So that way we can actually see the value username in that box. So I'm just going to save this. Ooh, and it looks like I've mismatched. I guess I can just do a single tick here. Okay, so I've got a single tick at the end, and then username I'm going to use double ticks in between. So I'm just going to save that, see what that looks like. Okay, so method open, so an undefined function. Okay, so it's trying to map to our home login controller. So if I go to my controllers, I have a home controller. Oops, I got a home controller, I misclicked. And I've got my index. So I can actually create my own controller here, which is going to be public function. And then I'm just going to create the controller called login. And then I'm just going to echo out test as a string. So this is the cool part with CodeIgniter. So I can actually create as many functions as I want in here. And so I can just do like test2. So I'm just going to make this a test2, and if I save this, so if I go to CodeIgniter, okay, so the first thing that you need to do is you need to identify the controller. So my controller is actually the home controller. So I know that because it's called home. All right, so that's my home controller. And then /, and then the method. So in here, my method, I've got a login. So if I typed in login, I see test. But I created another method that's called test2. So these aren't real pages. I mean, these are just methods. If I did a test2, 404, login to, oh, I didn't call it login to, I called it test2. So if I call it test2, then I go to test2. So we can actually dynamically create pages. We can do a lot of things with this URL mapping. And this is the power of using something like CodeIgniter. But for right now, the main thing I want is I just want to have the login. So the login is there. So if I were to come back to this page and refresh, call to undefined function form open. So I'm going to get rid of the test2. I was just doing that for educational purposes. So I've got my login. And I need to echo out the form open. So that way it'll actually write basically my form tag onto the document. So if I refresh, fatal call to undefined function, form open, 168, and that's exactly where I'm at. So I'm echoing out my form underscore open. What I need to do is within my index page, or within my home page, I've got my index here. In order to use this, I need to add in a helper. So I'm going to go this, load, helper, form, so by loading the helper in, this is the index. So before the home page even loads, we're loading the helper in, and that's going to give us the ability to use the form open, form input. So they're not enabled by default. You actually have to say load the form helper, and then it'll work. So now if I come back over here and refresh again, okay, so I've got a login. I see placeholder, so I'm not 100% accurate yet on the placeholder portion of this, but we're at least getting closer. I think I'm missing one. If I come back over here, I've got username, and then actually the value is the next attribute. So I'm going to just put in double quotes. I'm not going to actually put in any value. I could type in Bob, and then Bob would show up in the box, but I don't want anything to be in there, and then my placeholder will be in there. So if I save that, come back over here and refresh again, so now I have login, and then I've got my username. So I'm going to finish building up this form here. So I'm just going to copy this echo out, and I'm going to paste this in. So I've got a username, and then I need a password. So then my next attribute is going to be password. And then my placeholder is going to say password. So I'm going to save that. And then what I want to do is I want to do a form submit. So I'm going to do an echo. And that's going to be form underscore submit. Would have been probably faster to type it. And I don't need to pass in, well, actually, I do need to pass in the name of it and the action. So I'm going to type in, the first one's going to be submit, and then a comma, and then the second one is going to be what is displayed. So my form value. And I'm just going to say login. That way the button will say login. I'm going to do a semicolon. Then I'm going to do another echo. And then I'm going to do a form close. Okay, so then my form close doesn't need anything passed into it. So if I save that, so this is going to basically be my opening form tag and my closing form tag, and then in between are going to be, input box, and submit button. So if I save that and take a look at it, if I refresh, so I've got my username, password, my login button. So what I want to do is I want to actually move these all onto individual lines. So I'm just going to concatenate a break at the end of each one. So I'm going to go before my semicolon, but after my closing paren. And to concatenate, I use a period, and then I'm going to use a string, which is double quotes. And I'm just going to add my break tag in there. So I'm going to do that break period after all three of these and see what that looks like. Okay, so it's looking a little bit better. What I want to do is I think I just want to make them a little bit longer, and I want to just add a little bit of style to it. So I want to get the correct style sheet. So because I'm not exactly sure, I can right click, I can go to my inspector, and then from my inspector I can actually see I'm using the landing page CSS. So that's one quick way of doing it. Otherwise, you could scroll up to the top and try finding your CSS. It's got to be linked up here. So I've got my Bootstrap, Font Awesome, Font Graphics. Somewhere in here, I've got a style sheet as well. But the easiest way, I don't know. I always use my inspector. So I'm going to close site, open site, and then we have our assets. We put all of our style sheets in our assets. So I've got my CSS, and then in here, the one that I'm specifically looking for is my landing page CSS. And what I want to do is I'm just gonna quickly throw in just another element selector. So I'm going to use an input. And basically my input, I just want to add a width. I just want to add a width of, I don't know, I'm just going to go 250 pixels just to make them a little bit longer. And then I want to add a margin because they were so tight together. My margin, I'm just going to make it 5 pixels. Let's see what that looks like. I'm going to save that. So if I refresh that, I'm basically going to do the same thing. I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to paste it right below my create account. And then this time what I want to do is I need to make it submit to that home create. So instead of home login, we're going to create an account. So I'm just going to make it create. So in order to do that and make that work correctly, I'm going to have to go over to my home controller here. And I need to basically do the same thing here. Instead of using my login, I'm going to just do a create. And we'll eventually put more code in there. Alright, so I want to put a spot for error messages. So right now, if you log in, we could put error messages here. If you create an account, you can put error messages here. What I think I'm going to do is I think I'm going to make a row above here, and then I'm going to put error messages in there. So that'll be common between the both. That'll probably be the easiest way of doing that. So in order to do that, I've got a div tag that's a row. So I'm going to create another row. Here, and then I'm going to close my row. So that's just a div tag. And then what I want to do is I'm going to basically copy this because this is going to be my columns here. I'm going to close this up. So the way this works is you have 10 large columns and 12 small columns. So I want this to take the entire screen. So it's going to be 10 by 12. So it's just for the large screen, for the smaller screens 12. So notice how we split this. So it's 50-50. So it's going to be 6, and then it's going to be 5. So then what I want to do is I'm just going to add in a validation class here. So I'm just going to use my form helper, and there's a validate errors. And what this is going to do is it's going to automatically, if we find errors on the server side, we can validate them and then put them inside a p tag. And I'm just going to give a class of errors. That way we can make it red and bold and all that kind of stuff. And I think I need double quotes on that because okay, so I need to finish off that p tag. Oh, actually I don't. It will automatically do that for me. So that's kind of nice. So I do have to finish off the PHP tag. Okay, so validate errors. It's going to automatically use a p tag here, and it will stick everything that is not correct inside that p tag. So I need to do that. So I've got a less than, greater than. So it's basically just the opening p tag I'm passing inside the validate errors. So I'm just going to save that. I'm going to refresh. So at this point, my CSS still doesn't seem to be working. I actually do believe it's a caching issue. So I am going to clear my settings. I'm going to clear browser settings. Okay, so after clearing my cache, I now see that that my create account and my login is good. So the only thing I want to do for the UI at this point is I just want to basically move this login over a little bit. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm just going to kind of make another column here just to shove that over. So my CSS is good. At this point, my home page, we're going to do more with validation, but for right now, I've got a row, and then I've got a column and a column. So I'm just going to create one more column in here. So I'm going to do a div tag, which is going to be my opening column, and then I am going to do another div tag, which is going to be my closing column. So in order to do this, I'm just going to make the column basically a column width of a 1 for both the large and the small. So I'm going to do a 5 and a 5. So that's going to be basically 11 instead of 12, but that I think it's going to be okay. I'm going to have a little bit of dead space, but I don't mind the dead space. And then I'm going to do a 4 and a 4 instead of a 5 and a 5. So I'm just going to make them evenly spaced and then basically shove them over by one width. So if I come over here and save that, it just kind of moves that over a little bit, kind of gives them a little bit of space on this side, a little bit of space on this side. I mean, if I wanted to, I could actually split them into 4s, but I don't want them to be too close. Then I could split them into 5s, so I'd have basically 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But for right now, this is perfect. This is just what I wanted the login to be over a little bit, the create to be over a little bit. So if you want to continue on and finish up on the create is going to basically be, if I go to my database, we're going to be inserting our members into the member login. Password. So basically, you're going to need member name, member email address, member password. We'll automatically insert them in as a role number 2, which is a promoter, and we will automatically generate that key. So really, the only thing you need, okay, so you've got an email address, a name, and a password. So for over here, you've got username, password, and then I would just create full name, email address, password. So if you finish up that form, then I think our UI is pretty much done.